Good morning, Warzone kids. It's a good day out here on the trail. About a month ago, I finished the first draft of a book called A Pilgrim's Progress. That's why it's the name of the channel. And it's kind of a map of the terrain of my own inward journey. And I wrote it in the form of letters back and forth between two pilgrims on the path. The Pilgrim and Benji. Now both of them are me. Who else is gonna write it? Ain't no one else in my head but me. And this pilgrim leaves these letters along the trail for someone else to find in the future. And then they're picked up and read by Benji. That was my name as a child. And that's my name for the part of myself that has stayed alive through everything else and that I have learned to get in touch with as a Warzone kid. Benji is my Warzone kid. And I'm the adult, Ben is the adult wrapper around Benji that gets him through the world these days. And Benji is the motor and the unconscious and the subconscious of this man. And I have learned that Benji was very far away before I started the healing journey. He was very far away. And he had to scream to make himself heard. And he screamed by interrupted my life with addiction, with all the things I'm subject to. Addiction, binge eating, bulimia, finding ways to fill my life with drama to avoid the noise in my head. That's all the stuff those are all Benji screaming at me. So the pilgrim writes these letters and then Benji picks them up and reads them and he writes letters back. And they're letters to myself, from myself, left on the trail of my own inward journey. And I'll tell you a little bit about some of the places that we're going to go. That's why I call this the trailhead. This is a little bit of a map of some of the places on the trailhead. First long stretch we got is the moonlit miles. The path is easy, the ground is level, and the skies are always clear, the moon is always full. And while we're on the moonlit miles, we gotta examine what's in our rucksack, the bag of tools we carry with us to make it through life. And we come to the Grail Forest, where the path disappears, and the only way through is to head into the woods, where the path disappears and the woods are darkest and thickest. And you have to find the path by making it as you take one step at a time. We come to the scree slopes. Scree, that's a mountainside covered in loose rocks, and it just slips out from under your feet. That's one thing that happened to me along the trail to the Western Lands. Is a lot of things I thought I knew just up and vanished and disappeared out from under my feet. I lost my footing and found that there was no solid footing under me. The mountainside was all scree. But that scree is your footing. That scree is the ground. The ground of your real life, the ground that is always under your feet. No matter where you think it's gone, it's always there. It ain't solid, but it's there. That scree slips under your feet, rock by rock and pebble by pebble, but there's still scree under your feet, and that's what you walk on. We come to the La Brea, I can never say it. We come to the La Brea Tar Baby Beaver Bog. Tar babies from the Brer Rabbit story. Tar babies are ideas that you hold on to in your mind that get you stuck. Some of these ideas are about your culture that you come from. Some of these ideas you come along the way as a result of healing. Victimhood. Part of the process of healing is you got to recognize that stuff was done to you, harm was caused. And as long as you're trying to tough guy your way through it and say, hey, can't nothing hurt me, I'm strong. Well, you are strong, and strong means you can endure being hurt, don't mean nothing hurts you. If nothing hurts you, you don't need to be strong because nothing can hurt you. Just like if you ain't scared, you don't need bravery. You ain't brave till you're scared. There ain't no other way to be brave. Being brave is doing something anyway, even though you're scared. If you ain't scared, you ain't got to be brave. So, of course, you got to recognize that harm's been caused. The word victim is often what attaches to that. And the word and the concept of victimhood is a tar baby. You can get stuck in it. I've been victimized. I need the world to know I've been victimized. I need to tell everyone around me how much I've been victimized. I've been there. I've been knee deep in that tar baby, not able to get out. That's a tar baby. Anger, rage, that's a tar baby. For war zone kids, there comes along a time when you connect with the anger over being harmed. It's part of the process. There's anger in there somewhere because you've been hurt. You want to see the angriest animal in the world, it's an injured animal. And if you're a man that grew up any kind of remote way, like I did, you probably learned that you can dial in to one of your superpowers, which is you can almost always get your level of aggression cranked up high enough to cover whatever level of pain you have. When you're full of aggression, you're probably full of pain somewhere, and that pain might be masking wounds. Well, you got to get better. You got to use your strength to get better. And that rage is part of it. You got to connect with that. Angry over being wounded. Angry because them wounds hurt. And you got to get the agitation and that rage high enough to cover up the pain, because rage and anger are more pleasant feelings to feel than pain and fear. But they're all wrapped up. And rage and anger can be a tar baby. The quest for justice can be a tar baby. Because when you're questing for justice over your rage and your wounds and your pain, if you ain't real careful, you find out that the only justice there could possibly be for you is in changing the past, so it was something different than what it was. And then you're declaring war on the cosmos, because the past don't exist. It's gone. The past is only in your mind, and you bring it with you. There's no justice there, because the past just was what it was. The quest for justice covers up the quest just to be happy where you are now, happy and peaceful and whole. You don't realize it, but that's certainly how it seems to me, and that's been my experience. So that quest for justice, that can turn into a beaver bog, because who doesn't want justice? There's injustice as far as the eye can see. You run into a lot of problems in the world because one person's justice is another person's injustice, and the quest for justice very rapidly devolves into tit for tat and the never-ending quest for war. Very often in your mind, you find out that the quest for justice is just the same as that quest for war. They run into Magar's stronghold. That's a scene, that's a place I took from Game of Thrones. Jaime and Cersei in Game of Thrones, they got this long romance, they're brother and sister. And all they mean to each other is the world. And all the world means to them is each other. And when the world's falling down around them, they look for safety to Magar's stronghold, the sub-basement under the Red Keep in the big castle in King's Landing. And they rendezvous there because that's where they feel safe, because they're together. And because they rendezvoused there, they got crushed and died under a mountain of stone when Magar's stronghold caved in around them. And for me, Magar's stronghold are the places I go to when I get stressed or freaked out enough that I indulge my capacity for doing stuff in the world to make myself feel different. Addiction, bulimia, binge eating, filling my head with work or some other frivolous nonsense. That's Magar's stronghold. That's where I go to escape the Furies when their screaming gets too loud. And you get to Magar's stronghold from the Canyon of the Furies. That's a narrow box-like canyon, like a kind I went hiking through in New Mexico. Narrow box canyon. When there's sounds, you can't tell where they're coming from. The Furies scream at you, but their screams echo all around, and you can't tell that they're coming from in front of you. The Furies are screaming at you from inside Magar's stronghold, but you can't hear it because the echoes are all around, and you feel like their screaming is coming from behind you. So you run away at top speed. And where do you run? Where do I run when I'm running away from the Furies? I run straight into Magar's stronghold, and I dive in because that's my safe place. The place that's going to kill me. I'm an addict. Jails, institutions, and death take down a lot of my fellow human creatures that are addicts. And that's right where you run when the going gets too rough. You dive in Magar's stronghold. And then them Furies that are yelling at you, they're standing right there in between you and the exit. The only way to get out is right through those Furies. And that's when you find out, same thing that Aeschylus and Sophocles found out, that the Furies turn into the kindly ones, the graceful ones, the ones that bring terror and fear and chase you into Magar's stronghold are the ones that bring you peace and oneness with yourself. We come along in a while to Sappho's stones. Sappho. She wrote a poem, Greek poet, a woman who is a Greek poet from the Isle of Lesbos. She wrote poems, and we have only fragments of them, but one of those fragments says, "Don't be afraid to turn over the rocks on the beach." She said, if you're squeamish, don't turn over rocks on the beach, because you're going to find slime and worms and bugs under it and smelly ooze. But on the inward journey toward peace and happiness, you got to turn over those rocks. And you got to learn how not to be squeamish. When you turn over the rocks inside your mind, you got to see what's really there. Those rocks and that slime and those bugs and smelly ooze under those stones, that's you. And one of the figures that means a lot to me on the Trail to the Western Lands is the Hindu goddess Kali, goddess of life and death. Blood and water and piss, it's all the same. Life comes from death and death comes from life. And fungi grow from rotting trees. Life comes from the rotting corpses of dead animals. And your life comes from that ooze and slime under those rocks, the things in your mind that you never want to see or even know about. You'll never see him if you're too squeamish to turn over those rocks. You start with little rocks. The big rock at the end, the big Sappho stone that you need to turn over to get across the river of shit that's in your mind. You can't turn over those big rocks at the beginning. You got to turn over little rocks. And you got to stand those rocks up like dominoes. And you stand the little rocks up and the bigger rocks. And then finally those big Stonehenge-sized stones that you need to be the bridge to get across shit river. All you have to do is tap that first little stone and they'll come tumbling down like dominoes. And you'll cross shit river because you lost your squeamishness about seeing what's inside your mind. We come along to the wood between the worlds. That come out of the Narnia books, book 6, The Magician's Nephew. The wood between the worlds is a nice manicured English forest with trees and clear reflecting pools. And like Echo and Narcissus, you gotta look in those pools until you see yourself. And then you got to look away before you get captured and die looking into those pools where you see yourself. You got to dive in when you see the nightmare vision of yourself as you really are, and it looks like a twisted monstrosity. You run away from that pool and you run to all the other pools, but you find out that all the other pools have in them are twisted monstrosities, and they're all different, and they're all you. And those pools also have beautiful creatures, and those beautiful creatures are all you. And you got to dive in. And only in diving in do you find yourself. And you take a look back on the trail to the Western Lands, and you find the Grand Canyon stretching out behind you. You never even knew you were in it. But when you come out of that reflecting pool, out of the wood between the worlds, and you see yourself, you see how far you come. Except instead of being on top of Mount Everest, you're on level ground. And you look and you see thousands of feet below you, the trail that you've been on stretching out behind you, thousands of feet down. You see the canyons of the Gin. You see the Grail Woods and the Moonlight Miles and the Scree Slopes and all the places you've been. And then you see the past stretching out ahead of you. The past is a dust storm you have to get through to reach the present. And you got to find a little thread that'll take you through that dust storm. You got to find a little thread and wrap your fingers around it real lightly so you don't lose your way. And you got to just walk ahead through that sandstorm of the past until you reach the present moment. And this old pilgrim comes along to a horrendous patch of willowy, thickety, hellacious woods, one step at a time through a willowy thicket. And he comes across an old witch lady in the woods, and she beckons to him, and he makes his way to a little wigwam with a handful of witchy women, and they lead him into that wigwam. And what happens after that, you're just gonna have to read yourself, Pilgrim. But that's the map to the terrain of this guy's inward journey. This guy's journey toward peace and wholeness, toward the Western lands, the land where we were born, the place we've never seen, the land we've never left, our home. And when you're on the path to the Western lands, reach down and grab a handful of the soil at your feet. That soil is the soil of the Western lands, and that's your home. You made it. We made it. That's our home, Pilgrim. And I just wrote that book to try and share some of my experience. And those challenges that I told you about along the way, we're going to go through each one of those on this channel, and I'm going to share my experience about them. And this is like one of those little maps at the beginning of the trailhead to the Western lands. You are here. These are some of the things ahead of you. If your path is anything like mine. And I'll bet you that if you look, you probably find some ways to relate to this pilgrim as he shares his experience with you. Because I'm thinking about you right now, and whatever your life is, I'll bet you that this pilgrim will see a lot of himself in you and your life. Everyone's trail is different, and everyone's trail is the same. It's all our own. It's the only trail we've got, Pilgrim. Daylight's burning. Let's get a move on, Pilgrim. We got a lot of miles to walk. Let's walk them together. It's good company.